What is your worst inappropriate laugh moment? Clothing retail store. Little girl comes running up to me with arms inside a shirt far too big, swinging the sleeves by twisting her torso back and forth. I smile, lean down and play along with her game by saying, "You don't have any arms, do you?" Wasn't a game. She didn't have arms. I am going to heck for laughing at this. I went to get a physical exam at the doctor's for sports and I could not stop from laughing my butt off when he had to check my testicles. I think he felt more awkward than I did, lol. My sister came over to see us when she got back from her honeymoon. I asked her how it went and she said, "We broke up." She was so casual. I thought she was being sarcastic. Not a good time for laughter. My friend was late for her period and had me pick up a pregnancy test for her. She was too scared to look at the test after the 2-minute window, so I checked it, and for some reason I burst out laughing when pregnant showed up on the little LED screen. I could barely catch my breath long enough to tell her that she was, in fact, preggo. I still have no idea what got into me. They should have some that say pregnant. Making small talk with a girl at summer camp. She asked, "What do your parents do for a living?" My mom blah blah blah. "What about your dad?" "Oh, he's dead." Apparently I said it so bluntly and casually that she was caught off guard and laughed. Then I laughed. We were both cracking up. She asks if I was serious, and when I said yes, it was weird after that. My mother and her friend laughed hysterically in the middle of a friend's funeral service because the priest sounded like the Lemur King from Madagascar. Wakey wakey Mr. Alex. Story from my father when he was a lot younger that falls into the lines of this. He recently started a new job and wanted to come across as funny to his co-workers, so he's talking to an older woman about how sad he was because his uncle got a double leg amputation, and the woman is reacting very sympathetically and concerned. So he's going on about how he was supposed to get one leg amputated, but the hospital amputated the wrong leg, so they had to amputate the other, correct one. Well, apparently the woman fell for the bait and asked, "Oh my, are they going to go to court?" To which my father responded, "Well, he's got no leg to stand on," and starts laughing uncontrollably, and the woman starts crying and walks away. He later found out that her husband was a veteran who lost both of his legs in a combat-related injury. Ouch. Unexpected plot twist. I started laughing out loud in the movie theater when the scientist who was going to save the world tripped and died in World War Z. I was the only one. What a dumb way to die during the fricking zombie apocalypse. Not me, by rather my whole family. Being an Asian, when my grandfather passed away his body was left in his house and covered with a white sheet due to our culture. When we heard the news of his passing, everyone went over and paid our respect by kneeling down and praying to his body. 2 of my cousins came late and due to the chaos, didn't know what was happening or what to other than people pointing at my grandfather's general location and telling them to pray. So what they did was when they went near my grandfather, didn't notice the obvious corpse covered with white sheet, kneel down in front of the big old grandfather clock and start praying to it. Everyone saw, stop crying, remain in silence while 2 of them pray. When they finish and turn and look at everyone with a confused look like WTF are we praying to clock face, and everyone burst out laughing for a good 5 minutes. The classic why are we praying to a clock face. It's a beautiful thing. I was at my girlfriend's, now my wife, family reunion. She has a handicapped cousin who has trouble walking. We did the typical family games, bingo, water balloon toss, that sort of thing. Then we did the dizzy bat relay race. If you don't know, it's where you put your head down on a baseball bat and spin around it several times then run to a certain point. Since her younger handicapped cousin already had trouble walking, he didn't have to spin around. Anyway, when it was his turn he tried running so fast he fell face first into the grass pretty hard. Most normal people wouldn't have laughed and I wouldn't have either had I known he was handicapped. She has a large family in this cousin and his parents showed up late, so I didn't get introduced to them. Also, I ran right before, so I really wasn't paying attention to notice the cousin didn't spin around. It took me several seconds to realize no one else was laughing. No one has really spoken of it since, but I know they thought I was a complete douche. But, as soon as you said she has a handicapped cousin who has trouble walking, I knew where it was going and laughed anyway. So that makes me worse than you. At my synagogue, the rabbi reads the names of those recently deceased before the prayer for them. The last name was Weiner, and for some reason he just kept repeating this name. My friends and I walked out in tears. My friend's dad is Jewish and his last name is Weiner. He is a doctor and practices urology. Cracks me up just thinking about it. Almost laughing at a funeral because the priest brought out a saxophone to play a soulful rendition of Smile by Kirk Franklin. During a promotion ceremony, the guy reading the warrant fricked up. There's a passage that reads, "You will lead your Marines with firmness, fairness, and dignity." Instead, he said, "You will lead your Marines with firmness, fairness, and dignity." We kept our bearing for the ceremony, but afterwards we all laughed our asses off at him, and thus, a new inside joke in our shop was created. Fast forward 3 months, I'm sitting in a sexual assault brief where we're watching a very serious video. In this video, the commandant says, "Any assault on the dignity of another Marine is a stain on the reputation of our Marine Corps." I immediately thought dignity, and despite my mightiest efforts, I laughed. I got yelled at for laughing at rape. I got yelled at for laughing at rape, and then the entire military had to sit through another sexual assault brief. Freshman year of high school, I had a very heavy friend. We were at lunch and she went to sit down on a chair and the thing's legs broke and she fell. A lot of people saw. Now, she was my friend and I knew she was self-conscious about her weight, so I didn't know if it was okay to laugh or not. Once she laughed, everyone burst out laughing. We had a joke going for the rest of the year to never sit in the yellow chairs. She has since lost a bunch of weight and is looking great. Mega happy ending. When my dad was yelling at my brother, I was in the same room. LSS. My dad called my brother a fuckstick and I couldn't hold it in. My mom called me son of a b. I went to see Saving Private Ryan at the theater. The scene in the beginning where the guy gets shot in the helmet and took it off, looked at it, then got shot in the head and killed. Yeah, I thought that was supposed to be funny. I laughed out loud. I was the only one laughing out loud. I got a lot of dirty looks. That was a long movie. That is a hilarious part of the movie. That and when Tom Sizemore, I think, and the Germans stand about 10 feet away from each other before whipping their helmets at one another until they can get their guns out. My uncle was telling us a story about recently a cousin of ours was given a fireman's lift by some guy in a nightclub and he dropped her. I laughed. I should have waited for the bit where he explained she had a serious spinal injury. I don't think it would be any better if you laughed about the spinal injury. A close friend from high school had an epileptic hamster. I don't know why, but it always makes me laugh. It died mid-seizure while she was holding it and I have to contain myself thinking about it. It's very out of character for me. I love all animals of all sizes, and I know how devastating it is to lose a loved pet, but an epileptic hamster just made me lose it. Epileptic hamster just sounds funny. I imagine a messed up version of those old mobile ads with Crazy Frog, only with a hamster having a seizure. Wow, I'm a dong. Was uninstalling old plastic framed windows with co-workers. Frame broken, the broken glass sliced the FCK out of my co-worker's arm. Blood everywhere. I started laughing like a maniac, all the while having two voices in my head telling me, "IT's not funny, god dang IT, and that's hilarious. He. I no longer trust myself in situations like that, as I am deathly afraid of the evil me coming out and ruin me." Username. 50% relevance rating. When I was 16, I was arrested for driving in my mom's Jeep Wrangler and mooning cars as they drove by. They called my mom and she was furious. When my dad's sister at home asked her what she was so mad about, she explained the situation. They looked at each other, laughed their asses off, and proceeded to get screamed at by my mom because it's not a laughing matter. That made them laugh even harder. That's one I wish I was there for. While I was in police custody, my friend and I asked why it was such a big deal as to what had happened. The officer said in the most serious voice, "What if some old woman would have seen that, had a heart attack and crashed her car?" My friend replied, "We would have killed her with his butt." We couldn't stop laughing. Not smart to do in police custody. A friend of mine was telling a story about his family when we had him over for dinner. I only had my mind half on the story because I was thinking about getting up to get food out of the oven. and the steps I needed to take to get it on the table. This was a fatal mistake. He started talking about how his father was much older than his mother and was past 60 when he had been born. Based on his body language and tone, I was expecting an amusing story, so I kinda had the all-light chuckle queued up and ready to go. The next line was, so, when I was 3, my father died. I laughed. Somehow, we're still friends. This is horrible, but I cannot control my laughter. Glad there weren't any hard feelings. I remember when The Notebook came out in theaters, my girlfriend drugged me out to watch it on opening night. Some of you probably already know where I'm going with this. At the end, when the wife goes ape crap and tries to beat up her husband in that delusional, Alzheimer-fueled rage, I for some reason absolutely lost it. Maybe because I had to sit there for 2 hours watching that mushy movie, but I burst out laughing horrendously loud while all the girls in the theater were recoiling in horror. My girlfriend hit me with her purse and I looked down to see all the girls sitting below me glaring at me like a toilet full of used condoms. Still deciding if I should feel ashamed. Toilet full of used condoms. Need to use that one, haha. I was at school, a normal lesson in English. Thankfully we got to watch a great movie about the South African apartheid. I can't remember the name. Something about Steve Biko and Donald Woods. Essentially there's this scene at the end where a bunch of South African children are protesting and they are faced with the police, who have guns. I don't know why the frick I did this, but as soon as those machine guns started mowing the kids down I lost it. My teacher was completely surprised. She probably hates me now, and the teaching assistant called me a sick child and blamed it on video games. My class now thinks I am the biggest racist in the world. I have no idea why I laughed. I certainly didn't find it amusing. I must be a pretty sick guy. I literally just smiled and laughed at children getting killed. Common reaction to uncomfortable situations. It's like when you get nervous, some people just start giggling. This thread was made me for me. I do this all the time. It's such a problem. The best one probably happened in high school. I snuck out of my house to go to a guy's house around 2 AM. I get there, and we immediately start hooking up. Clothes come off and I end up on top of him, grinding away, but not doing the actual dirty. Suddenly he grabs me and tries to push me off saying, stop, 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 please edge it off, stop. I get up and as soon as I do, he comes all over his own face. He even got some in his eye and was desperately trying to clean up. Even though I should have been nice and consoled him, I couldn't stop laughing. So I got dressed as fast as I could, ran out of his house, and drove home, laughing all the way. If you're out there reading, hi Alex. Hey I. My mom passed away 4 years ago. She had ALS, so we knew it was coming. She had asked me to present the gospel at her funeral. I'm not a preacher, but have done some preaching and went to seminary for a while before realizing vocational ministry wasn't my thing. She hadn't been at church in a while, so the funeral director, who was a retired pastor, offered to officiate. When it was my time to get up and talk, I spoke about her life and her identity in Jesus, reading a couple passages from the Bible. It was about a 5-7 minute sermonette. I sat down and he got up to talk. Now keep in mind, he had never met my mom. We went to set up the funeral arrangements a week before she died, and he was going to come out, but she passed away before he could. He kept talking about how my mom wanted a short service, which was true. In fact, for a long time, my mom said she didn't care if we rolled her in burlap and dumped her in a gully. We didn't, by the way, but he kept going on and on about it, to the point that afterwards my sister and I both commented that if he had not said it so often, she would have actually had a short service. Then when he got done talking, he walked over to the family pew and started with me. He shook my hand and said something like, "That was a great message you had. I couldn't have said it better myself." After the funeral, back at my mom's house, my sister and I sat around and laughed at the service. I told her what the director said and then remarked, but that didn't stop him from taking 15 minutes to try to say it better. All in all, we laughed quite a bit that day. We sat out on the front porch while a lot of my mom's friends and stepdad's family were inside. Outside was a much more light-hearted conversation than inside. At one point we even remarked that it was such a shame that it was my mom's funeral, because that meant she couldn't be there to laugh at all the stupid stuff that went on. That's a really nice story. I'm sorry for your loss. My best friend growing up told me that her small dog died the day before. I asked what happened and she said it got in a fight with a Great Dane. I lost it. Still feel bad about that to this day. So, I just went to a baby shower, and we played hit the ovary with the sperm, all made with a plastic, white bag, pens, and a polystyrene ball, with my friend's kid's plastic bow and arrow set. We took it in turns to see who could fertilize the egg, and it got to my go. I failed miserably. Every time I pulled the arrow back and let go, it would just stay in the bow and wouldn't shoot. I eventually managed it, did not fertilize any eggs, so absent-mindedly started pulling the arrow back in the bow, trying to figure out why I am so crap at using this kid's toy. Next thing I know, I've let go, managed a perfect shot, but hit my heavily pregnant friend in the chest at the distance of 1 meter. The build up to it made it so much more funny, because I'd been so delightfully awful at using it for the last 5 goes. TLDR, I shot a pregnant friend in the chest with an arrow, laughed until I cried. This TLDR really, needs the context of the thread. A few summers ago, I was at the wedding of a family friend. They're pretty religious, so the ceremony was held in a Catholic church with the whole mass and everything. Now, I was not raised with any religion, so whenever I do have to go to ceremonies I have no idea what's going on. I just follow what everyone else is doing, and sometimes aspects of the ceremony take me by surprise. At some point during the ceremony, the priest picks up the plate with the host, holds it aloft like graffiti and proclaims in the most serious of manners, "This is Jesus." In the dramatic silence that followed, I pretty much lost my crap. This, in turn, caused my mom, my brother, and the 2 people sitting in front of us to start laughing as well. Luckily, the priest invited everyone up to take communion, and I took the opportunity to get back under control. I couldn't make eye contact with my little brother for the rest of the service, though. When I was about 12 I went to see the Milwaukee Bucks play basketball. Well, all of a sudden they bring what appear to me are just some kids or teenagers onto the court to sing the national anthem. They looked clueless as they were walking on the court, just staring around all over the place. Well, they start to sing and it is just horrible, like cat getting gangbanged by some dogs. Horrible. I start cracking up really bad and thinking, why are these people singing? They sound like crap. And I just keep laughing until it's over. 2 girls sitting in the row ahead of me look behind in disgust at me. I soon find out that they were mentally handicapped adults. I felt like crap for laughing. Still do. In my defense, there were bad seats and it was hard to tell. I sure love playing a good old basketball. I laughed when my ex cousin told us she was pregnant during her 2 months in a relationship. That relationship didn't last long after that. Watching the boy in striped pajamas in the theater. At the part in the movie when the guard makes the comment they smell even worse when they burn, don't they? The theater was entirely filled with old people except my buddy and I and a girl in the row in front of us. All of us were about 16 at the time and all of us busted up laughing. The old people were appalled. I think I was in 4th grade. Basically, a younger kid had cancer and we all knew he was going to die. On one fateful day they announced it over the intercom. I don't know what the heck I was thinking, but I cracked up. I got beat up at lunchtime. I'm sorry for laughing, Gabriel. I was a weird kid. I still am. Okay, so, when I was a teenager and still living at home, my dad picked me up from work instead of my mom. Mom had to fly back home. Your Uncle Joe died today. How did he die? I asked. He was playing a game of pickup basketball and had a heart attack. Her brother was a basketball coach. Not famous or anything, but dude was a hoops freak. Not knowing what else to say, I went with the "all well, at least he died doing what he loved best." And no crap. The moment I said that, I thought what? Rolling around on the ground, clutching his chest, and yelling for someone to call 911. Managed to not laugh, but man, it was tough. R.I.P. Uncle Joe. I'd love to people to make fun of my death like this. I rather them laugh. I'll be dead so I won't care. During a funeral, a kid with Down syndrome in the back of the church began vomiting. My older brother turned to my sister and snidely remarked, "Great, somebody else died." My sister couldn't stop giggling. She finally got the noise under control, but her silent laughing made the whole bench jiggle for 5 minutes. I was a clueless teenager. My grandfather was dying of cancer and had more than a little Alzheimer's going on. My father, his son, was not handling it well, so stress levels for everyone were off the charts. A ton of mandatory visits to the grandparents were happening. That just grew more awkward. This is not a family that got along well, even in the best of times, all the time as I watched my grandfather physically and mentally wither away. Now, I said he had cancer. He was also still smoking. The damage was done. Quitting smoking wasn't going to help him at all, and withdrawal from nicotine was only going to make his last days weeks that much worse. So frick it, smoke him up. So during one of these awkward visits, he pulls out a cigarette, stares at it, really studies it, then puts it into his mouth backwards and tries to light the filter. Everyone sees this happening. No one says anything, and I laugh. Short and quick, but I laughed. I don't think my father ever truly forgave me, but, to be fair, I pulled the plug on him 10 or so years later. So, frick you your alcoholic wife beater. So, frick you your alcoholic wife beater. Bahawa. And then I had a most inappropriate laugh moment, reading this in class. When I'm getting a physical, I have no idea why I laugh, but it just makes crap more awkward and embarrassing when I have to hold back laughter. Laughed at the scene in Mars Attacks where the thing with the American flag happens. I was in a theater in the state of Hawaii, near a military base. The local girl I was with warned me she thought I was going to get beat up. Probably when I was walking down an aisle at the store and saw one of the wheels of this woman's cart broke or something, because it tipped. She was in the middle of looking at something that was on a low shelf. When she heard it and saw it starting to tip, she jumped up and tried to stop it from turning over and spilling everything. Instead, she ended up falling over with it. It was such a comical sight that I burst out laughing. She heard me and turned her head with a look of frustration, embarrassment, and hate. After that I started helping her out and felt really bad because not only had that happened to her groceries, but her clothes were covered in bits of egg and other things that broke and spilled with the cart. I was in a wilderness program when I was 16. Troubled youth kind of thing. We had levels you had to advance through to get more privileges and eventually leave. When someone advanced, we had a ceremony where they were blindfolded and everyone had to put stuff in their hands like dirt or a bow drill. We would say this is dirt. It symbolizes your rebirth or some stupid crap like that. One of the ceremonies my friend decides to bring a potato. Right in the middle of the ceremony when it's his turn to hand the kid something, he hands it over and says deadpan, "This is a potato." I don't know what he said after that. I don't even know if we finished the ceremony. We seriously laughed for 5 minutes straight while the counselors yelled and tried to keep things moving. My dad was introducing me to his sister and was laughing at a joke she was telling. It was at his mother's funeral. We were at the very front. His other sister was LOL. Had an uncontrollable giggling fit while reading out the Lord's Prayer in front the whole school at Monday morning assembly. So inappropriate. A girl told me later that day that I should go crucify myself. When my ex-girlfriend told me her uncle died, she just said they didn't get good news from the hospital and casually mentioned he died. I giggled from being surprised. I was at my grandma's funeral service in a Catholic church, and while the priest and nun were walking around shaking hands with everyone, the nun was very obviously crop dusting everyone. My brother and I couldn't stop laughing at our grandma's funeral. I almost laughed in class while I was on Reddit, and I realized at that same moment the professor was talking about his brother who had cancer. I'm so glad I didn't laugh out loud. My buddy's brother passed away when I was 18 and my friends and I went to the church service and funeral. So you know those chairs that got an opening in the back right by the seat part? Well, picture those, and they also got a shelf below that holds Bibles. We were sitting behind some middle-aged woman and her family while the pastor was speaking and doing the eulogy. My friend reaches for a Bible and thumbs through it for a few moments and goes to put it back. However, it doesn't go in. So he starts shoving repeatedly again and again. Then all of us, 4 guys, Start laughing aloud during the eulogy as we realize he has been repeatedly shoving a Bible into this lady's butt through that opening in the lower back part of the chair. That poor lady was too nice uncomfortable to turn around and tell my friend that he has been ramming her butt with a Bible. TLDR. Laughing in funeral because friend repeatedly and mistakenly shoved a Bible into lady's butt. Edit. Redundant words are redundant. I visited a friend with a couple of other mates. We got there really late, like 3 AM. 5 hours drive. And instantly started to get hammered. After a while I pointed out that our host is really ugly on this picture on the wall. We were there for the first time. He went silent and told us that it's a picture of his deceased sister when she was young. We all went silent for a second, but then I bursted out laughing because the situation was so hilarious to me. Luckily he took it with humor since it happened a couple years ago and they deal with this matter openly in their family. And we were all drunk as frick. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.